Fulhamish is sponsored by Beer52.com, the UK's #1 craft beer club. If you or someone you know loves your craft beer, then this company send you small batch craft beer every month straight to your door. And you can get £10 off your first box using the code Fulham at Beer52.com. And you support the podcast at the same time as well. To get £10 off your first order, just use the code Fulham at Beer52.com. Hello, it's Fulhamish Podcast, the first show of May. Thank you for downloading this week's episode. My name's Sammy James. This is the show that takes a sideways view of everything to do with Fulham FC. Nearly as comforting as a 14-goal difference cushion between ourselves and Leeds. Joining me on this week's episode is Farrell Monk.
Welcome back, Sammy.
Thank you very much, Ben Jarman.
Good evening, Sammy.
And Jack Collins.
Hello, listeners. This is London calling.
Thank you for stepping in for the last few weeks, Jack, to the hot seat.
You're more than welcome, Sammy. It was my pleasure.
I've been in the land of Neil Etheridge for the last couple of weeks, and what a few games I've missed.
Just Googling where Neil Etheridge is from.
He's from the Philippines.
Yeah.
He played for the Philippines national side and famously played that one game against the Denza, didn't
He did, and basically knocked us out of the competition.
he? He did, but let's gloss over that.
I think it was Orlando start.
He was a Filipino legend. Let's gloss over that. So, in the meantime, while I've been gone, it's been an incredible few weeks for Fulham. 3 wins and a draw, and that final draw against Brentford on Saturday means that Fulham have booked themselves into the playoffs, barring an almighty goal swing between ourselves and Leeds. It would be a bigger swing than Anthony Joshua's left hook against Klitschko on Saturday night. It would be an insane turnaround if Leeds somehow managed to do it. So let's just presume for the entire podcast that we're in the playoffs. Is that safe to say?
You've made worse calls.
I've made worse calls. Jack, it was an entertaining game on Saturday. Pretty tense for the whole thing. What were the best 3-word reviews that we got in?
I liked Dave Doy64's It's Just Beginning. I liked Who Dat, FFC Who Dat, who said, I'll take that, which was basically how I felt about the entire situation. And Dom at Piazon Passion, who said, don't want Wednesday.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see who we do get in the playoff semi-final. We booked our place then with a 1-1 draw over our rivals from West London after Leeds drew with Norwich at Elland Road. It was tense at times on Saturday. It was a little bit fraught. Brentford came there with a game plan. They kind of succeeded in a way because they nabbed themselves a point. But really, Fulham were unlucky not to take all 3 on Saturday because we were dominant for large swathes of the game.
Yeah, 100%. I think we were the better side for the large majority. That said, by the time it got to sort of 70 minutes and the game really opened up, we should have been out of sight. And at that point, it was like, is this a game we're going to lose? And they had some good opportunities. You know, Ben mentioned Joseph Zoon last week, who had a good opportunity. Lasse Weber had a couple of good shots on goal. And so it wasn't entirely as comfortable as I think maybe we would have hoped. But, you know, we got the job done at the end of the day. And even if it meant, you know, we needed a helping hand from our friends over in East Anglia, it was, you know, what we needed. And we can't complain too much, I don't think.
It was a very good start for Fulham, Ben. Tom Kearney smashed Fulham into the lead from Sessegnon's cross. I looked up how many assists that Ryan Sessegnon had. It's actually only his 3rd assist of the season. Feels like he's had a lot more. But with Norwich racing into such a big lead against Leeds at Elland Road, it was all going so swimmingly after around 10 minutes. It literally couldn't have gone better at the start.
Yeah, so it felt like we were in dreamland when we went 1-0 up so early, and then we see that Norwich are coasting into a 3-0 lead. But when they scored the goal, and then when we found out that Norwich were being pegged back by Leeds, it almost certainly turned into like a nervy afternoon, and we sort of sat very tightly hoping that we didn't give up those points and lose out to Leeds and set ourselves up for a biggest fail on the last day of the season. But going back to your original point, like Sessegnon has been amazing for us for the majority of the season. And it feels like he's involved more than he has been with the 3 assists, just because he offers so many balls before the counter. He offers so many incisive runs, and he's really important to our play. But it doesn't necessarily mean that as always he's providing that last outcome. So it's exceptional for a 16-year-old to be playing like that.
A nice finish from Tom Kearney as well. I mean, Obviously, the goalkeeper had been drawn out, but still had to finish it.
Yeah, it's a brilliant finish from him, and you always expect him to tuck that one home.
Shame he can't tuck it away from 12 yards, but we'll come on to that later. Farrell, Floyd Ayite had some great chances to double the lead. Very unlike him, because he's been so almost predatory for the whole of the season with his goal scoring, especially that one where he's through on goal. I mean, obviously, he should have done better, but it took an awful bobble, didn't it?
Yeah, it was really unlucky, and you quite rightly point out that he has been pretty clinical when he has had the chances that have fallen to him. It was so unlucky, and I did turn around to my brother and say, "Oh, I hope we don't rue that," and we almost did, ever so slightly, we almost did in the end. It was so unfortunate, and I think after that his finishing kind of got worse. He did suffer that little bit of confidence that he was going to miss another chance, because when the ball did fall to him for a shot, he did dilly-dally a little bit. I think if that first chance goes in where he was through one-on-one, that after that confidence would have flowed through him a bit more and he would have been a bit more decisive. There was the one that the ball that fell to him for that ultimately resulted in the penalty, that he took an extra 2 or 3 touches when in reality he should have just absolutely thrashed at it. But that happened quite a few times. But you can't fault his all-round play. He was pretty good overall, and just unfortunate not to get a goal.
I don't know why he didn't just take it round the keeper like he did at Norwich. Why not show off 10 minutes in?
Yeah.
Why not?
Exactly. And Brentford, they came to Craven Cottage. They were looking to spoil the party. They couldn't sell out their cup final, as nicely pointed out by Farrell on Twitter. But they looked a lot better side than the one that we met back in Griffin Park in November. And interestingly, when you look at the league tables for the calendar year, Fulham are top, and that's amazing. But actually, Brentford are 4th in the table, or at least they were in 2017. So it wasn't an easy time to face them. Admittedly, a lot of their points have come at Griffin Park rather than away from home.
We said on the pod last week that they would be a totally different outfit from the one that we faced them at Griffin Park, and quite rightly so. And they were certainly a much better team. We were quite unsure as to which Brentford would actually show up. Would they be right in our faces, or would they be more cautious? And they I think they managed the game quite well. I think they chose when to attack us, and they chose when to sort of sit back and absorb some of the pressure, because there were points in the game where they were firmly on top. And we're not talking in small periods. We're talking in over 10, 15-minute periods where like Brentford are right giving it a go here. But there were other times where obviously the manager, Dean Smith, decided, look, next 5 boys, just sit back in, absorb some of that, and let's hit them on the break.
I think that especially given that when I looked at the first Brentford team sheet and we saw that Woods was out, and I was like, oh, that's a big, big win for Fulham. It's a big kind of gap in the middle of their midfield, and I don't know if anyone saw the Get West London combined teams over the course of last week, but especially the Brentford correspondent had Ryan Woods in there ahead of Kevin McDonald, and whether that's bias or just blindness to a team, that's a different thing to be arguing. But Ryan Woods has had a good season, and he's also completed a lot of passes, and there was a feature on that in Squawker and all the different players that have completed a lot of passes this season in the Championship. So as soon as I saw Woods was out, I was thinking this could be a really good day for Fulham. We could dominate the midfield, but they managed the game really well, and I thought that they were going to go into it and try and make it a blood and thunder derby in the way that Holloway might like, because I think that I thought that if Fulham played them at their own game, we'd outplay them, and we'd be able to sort of run rings around them slowly and surely. But they did really well, and they were a good side for the majority of the game, and they looked to hit us on the counter, and they looked dangerous on the break for 90 minutes, to be honest. And I think that ultimately it wouldn't have been unfair for Fulham to come away with all 3 points, but neither was it unfair for Brentford to come away with a point on Saturday.
They played some really, really expansive and slick football throughout the whole afternoon, really. And I think one of the focal points of their game was obviously Hotter, and him coming in off that left flank and drifting inwards and really conducting the play there. And it gave us a lot of issues, because it's just a case of who actually picks him up there. Is it McDonald or is it Malone, or on the other side is it going to be Fredericks? And again, McDonald, that inverted winger. We have quite a lot of issues with that, and then the diagonal ball they caught us out with a few times as well. But they play some really nice and expansive stuff, which is stark contrast to what they were playing when we played them first time round. So their development's been huge.
So looking back at some of the individual moments of the game, one of the key ones was just at the end of the first half. Fulham awarded another penalty that we failed to capitalise on. Awarded for the foul on Steph Joe by Yohan Barbe. And actually, Farrell and I were discussing just before the game, actually quite good that the referee gave that penalty. Not denying that it wasn't a penalty, but actually I think a lot of referees might have just gone, the chances continued and ignored the foul, but it was a clear foul on Steph Joe. But why didn't TC listen to our very own Jack Collins last week? Here's the clip of what he said.
Good from TC to put it in the same spot. If we get another one, does he have to change that, Dom?
No. 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 Just put it in the same spot, it'll go in.
I mean, I hate to give Jack credit. I really, really do. I really always try and avoid it where I can. But, I mean, you did predict it, Jack.
Yeah, I mean, spot on.
Why? Why did
What
I
are your lottery numbers this week?
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that, but it wasn't even that. You know, the point that we made at the time was that, you know, that you said that Dempsey was the master of putting poor penalties away, and it kind of, to a point, we didn't discuss the actual fact that Kearney had put two not brilliant penalties into a place where the keeper hadn't dived, and that was it. And we, you know, so therefore it was always going to come back to bite him. And actually, weirdly enough, this penalty was a better one.
Yeah.
It was a better penalty into that corner, and it looked like it was going to just sneak inside the corner. And it's a really good save, and that is to be commended on Daniel Bentley's kind of behalf. But you know, if he's watched anything to do with where Kearney's going to put his penalties, then he knows where that's going to go. And all it needed to be doing was thump down the middle. And no one ever stays still.
It's a classic. It's classic commentators one. If it goes in, like a poor penalty, they always do that one where it's a great penalty. Keeper's made the keeper dive the wrong way, which I've always thought is absolute bullshit. Like the keeper's just gone before the penalty taker's even gone. But in this situation, it was actually the opposite. I actually thought it was a really well struck penalty. It didn't bobble at all. It seemed to be going in the right area. But Bentley's made quite a good save from it.
Strong words from Farrell there. So how many this season? I've actually completely lost count of how many we've missed and scored now.
Missed 9 out of 13, so we scored 4.
Have we seen the stats that's been doing the rounds this week, sort of on BBC Sport, also sort of on Opta Joe? I think it's the case that Fulham have
Missed more penalties than
67 teams in the league have had.
I think that just shows how often we get in the box.
It's a good thing. To be making these chances. We just really need someone that's going to put the ball in the back of the net. And I don't know how many more times we can say it, or if we want to change this record. Like, do you know what I mean? We're all talking the same kind of nonsense on a regular basis, but eventually someone's going to have to listen. And yeah, it looked like it was going to be TC to step up, but he's actually, when it's come to it, and surely when he was putting the ball on the spot there, he's going, has Bentley done his homework on me? Because if he has, he knows exactly where I'm putting this ball.
Well, of course the keeper's done the homework on him. He's done the same penalty 3 times in 4 matches. Like, the keeper doesn't deserve a wage if he hasn't understood where Kearney's going to put his penalty if he gets one.
Yeah, but then Kearney, are we going to argue that Kearney doesn't deserve a wage for not thinking about it the other way?
Yeah, I'm completely on board with that. Like, Kearney should be smart enough to think that I've put my 2 penalties in the previous 2 games in the same place. Now I should probably switch it up.
Or chuck the ball to someone else.
Maybe he thought Bentley was going to go that way anyway, and he's going to double bluff him.
No, but you'd be an idiot to think that Bentley isn't going to understand where you're going to put a penalty. Like, surely you must be so ignorant not to understand that.
I think there's 2 types of good penalty taker. There's the Alan Shearers, who are so good at hitting penalties. They hit it so clean. They hit it in the same place every time. They don't need to think about the keeper. I'm so good at hitting penalties that doesn't really matter where they dive. I'm just going to hit the same spot every time, and they can't get near, or they might get 1 in 20. They might just have such a good dive, or I might just not quite hit it right. Or you have to be slightly clever. Okay, I'm not the greatest penalty taker in the world. I can't hit the side netting every single time. But actually, I'm going to vary my penalties so much. I've got so much variety in my taking that I'm going to outsmart the goalkeeper. Unfortunately, Tom Kearney's not fallen into either bracket. He can't hit a penalty so well that a keeper can't save it. And he's also not been seemingly smart enough to go, well, I'm going to vary my penalties and outfox the goalkeeper.
We haven't discussed that Floyd Aite is actually quite a good penalty taker and has quite
I mean,
a
we've
decent...
gone through the whole team.
No, but he has quite a decent record, and he remains
Sean
the only
Kavanagh,
one
your
that,
time is up.
he remains the only one that hasn't really had a crack at it. Because when we had the penalty sort of blip, he was actually out.
Yeah.
And we talked about it at the time that we'd be looking to have Aite back. And Ben, you brought up the stat in the first place,
Yeah.
but no one's still given him the ball.
No, he hasn't even tried one this year. And last year when he played for Bastia, he scored 2 or 3. He was like their key penalty taker, albeit Bastia aren't a very expansive side and they don't often get in the box. But Aite can definitely put them away from my experience of watching him in the past.
Slavisa, have a word.
Yeah, I can't.
We're all waiting for those penalty shootouts anyway in either the playoff semi or maybe even the final.
Could you imagine if we banged 5 in 5 in a penalty shootout?
I think it's nailed on.
That's
Yeah.
Fulhamish.
I think it's
I'm
absolutely
putting a
nailed
bet
on.
on right now for it.
I don't know if I'd even be that happy. Like, why?
Yeah, just we could have had automatic promotion if you just.
Yeah.
So second half, it was quite even really. Both teams matching each other. Fulham really seemed to be lacking in the last 20-25 minutes, running a bit out of steam, and it led to Brentford having some quite good chances. I think Lasse Weber had the best of them, and Betts had to make some pretty good saves to keep the score at 1-1.
I don't know if the message got to the players at all about the result that was going on at Leeds, but it certainly got nervy. And I don't know, it might have come from the crowd because the crowd all round got really. You can actually the tension was visible even, and I think that there was a lot of nervy play going on. There was a lot of misplaced passes, a lot of like poor decision making going on. Not for the want of trying, but I don't know if players were hanging on to the ball a bit more than they should do or not making the right decision. But it did get nervy, and that let Brentford right back into the game. They got their tails up, the crowd started getting behind them for the first time in the game. And, I was sitting there just like biting my fingernails to death. And yeah, everyone was trying to check the score at the same time. And there was that weird point where the board went up and like we started passing it around really like nonchalantly just outside our own box, and we were like, no, we need a winner just in case Leeds score. I don't know if the Slavica had told them, no, just hold on to it, don't worry about it.
I think there was something that Ryan Frederick said where he said we realised what the lead score was when we went in at half time because someone said it to us. But he said I was taking a throw on and someone in the crowd shouted, "Oi, it's 3-3, get a move on." And he was like, oh God, it was a real like wake up call. He was like, and we said it at the end. He said we didn't really discuss it during the game, but at the end, obviously, Kearney realised. Obviously, you saw his Instagram post about the moment where you realise is when the Hammersmith end draws, and yeah, it's interesting to think that just a bloke on the side has just informed Ryan Fredericks that he needs to get on with it. Like,
there was that famous
not
moment.
Slavisa, not maybe like Marcus Azario or something like that. Just Dave in Block J.
There was that famous moment about 40 years ago where Coventry got relegated thinking that they only needed a draw, and they took it into the corner and they actually needed to win.
In terms of Bettinelli, which we haven't really discussed, there's more to be said for his introduction to the team than maybe we've gone into, and it's not necessarily that he's a better keeper, and a lot of people have pointed this out recently. It's not necessarily anything to do with his shot stopping, but his actual sort of passion and drive behind the team, and the way that he's sort of so involved in it and is sort of a natural leader somewhat at the back, because he obviously responds to people and the fans respond to him, and it feels like there's sort of that more confident era. Well, we've got 13 points out of 15 since he's come back into the side, and that's a nuts statistic. That's a really, really impressive return, and not something that can be discounted quite as easily as I think we have.
For the wider team, it's an incredibly timely boost to what was looking like a campaign that may potentially slip away out of our hands after Derby. And I mean, I think Betts is very, very aware of what he can and what he can't do on a football pitch, whereas David Button is consistently trying to do things that are above his station or sort of like out of his remit, where he tries to bring the ball out the back and tries to distribute out to the wings in a very fancy manner, whereas Betts sort of does the bread and butter goalkeeping very, very well, and that gives confidence to the rest of the team. And there's no coincidence that since his inclusion in the team that Tim Ream's got better and better. The command of the box has got better and better, and we've looked much more able at set pieces to defend our own box. whereas before we looked very shaky and there was not enough communication, at least in my opinion.
Interesting you mention his character, actually, rather than necessarily his play, because you think back to all the great goalkeepers over the years, and a lot of them have got one thing in common, and they've all got not necessarily a great personality, but they've all got a wacky personality. And actually, you never seem to get that impression from Button that he was really making a mark on the team. He seemed like quite a quiet figure in the dressing room. And it's hard for me to say. I don't know David Button personally. I don't know what the real atmosphere is in that dressing room. But maybe, as you say, Marcus has brought in more than just some extra technical ability in the goalkeeping remit. It's just the fact that his personality has lifted the team somehow.
Well, if you think about, Schmeichel, Grobbelaar and Oliver Kahn, they all had huge personalities. And I think we've sort of, over the years, got to know Betts a bit personally off the pitch, and we know what kind of personality he has. But we don't really know that about Button. And coincidentally, before the match on Saturday, there was a really nice piece by Henry Winter on Fulham and on Betts, well worth a read if you can get your hands on it, where he just says that he loves being part of the club, and he receives chocolates on Valentine's Day and Easter.
That's just because he's a good-looking fella. Nothing to do with his goalkeeper.
He's a great-looking guy. He's a great-looking guy and a handsome bloke. But he's a great keeper to have around. And Jack, I think, nailed it. I hadn't even thought about the sort of character element to a keeper. But like I said, Khan had it, Schmeichel had it, and a lot of great keepers do have a very unique personality. And that's why they're a strange breed, I guess.
All goalkeepers are crazy, as Rob Child once said.
Absolutely.
But thinking about it, our best ever goalkeeper was Van der Sar, and you wouldn't say that he was a particularly big character apart from physically. Although my favourite ever moment of his, probably outside of the pitch, was listening to a BBC radio interview with him, and he sounded just like Kermit the Frog.
He was actually really weird. There's loads of really weird videos of him doing weird stuff on the internet, and his radio interviews. Not that weird, sadly. not your kind of weird.
Yeah, your kind of weird.
Yeah. But no, he definitely was a bit of an odd character. And not necessarily... I think I agree with you in the point that he's not necessarily a big shouting at people character. I think he was just a bit of an oddball. And, we've had loads of weird goalkeepers, surely.
They live such a lonely life, it's really difficult for them not to be normal.
I mean, do you remember, did you ever watch Dream Team? And the goalkeeper, Jaws, was the most erratic character.
My friend Jamie's brother was in Dream Team.
Was he?
There you are. Harchester United.
You're becoming like Ben Jarman, you know people.
Yeah, I know people.
Did you go down the Dragon's Lair?
Oh no! I mean, I've met him far after Dream Team had come out, but it's a nice little moment.
For anyone that doesn't live in the UK, this was a weird TV sitcom, maybe about 10 years ago.
Sitcom?
Yeah, it was like a soap, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah, it was soap. Yeah.
About a fictional football team called Harchester United, and my favourite thing about it is they played in purple. So whenever they used to show real footage of Harchester United playing, they would doctor the colour of any team that played in blue.
Yeah. I used to...
Chelsea, Millwall, anyone that was... Everton, anyone that played in blue, and they would doctor Harchester United into
Of
it.
all the wonderful things you could have liked about Dream Team, you liked about the fact that they doctored colours on the computer. that was your go-to standout point.
I didn't like it. It was a weird TV show.
I remember when they played in the playoff final, and they tried to use footage from a playoff final that Sky Sports had, and they realised that no team had played in blue for such a long time. So they made up this storyline beforehand that we don't have our home kit. Our kit man forgot the home kit, so they turned up with an orange kit, which they then doctored Crystal Palace's kit to use that footage instead.
That's a great point. I love that.
Anyway, away from Dream Team and Harchester United, in the end, Fulham secured a 1-1 draw, and that point was enough to secure, effectively, we keep having to kind of put these asterisks in after every time we say it, we've effectively secured our playoff position, barring an almighty 14-goal swing. Jack pointed out to me earlier that no team in the Football League has ever recorded a 10-0 win. Is that correct?
Not since the Premier League has been put in, I believe.
Still time.
We're not as confident as Pontus Jansson of Leeds qualifying for the playoffs before Saturday. because he was going on about how we are 200% going to qualify for the playoffs.
It was really weird. He was like, "It's all definitely in our hands," and people were like, "Well, it's just not." That's incorrect, Pontus.
Stick to defending, not mathematics. But how big an achievement is reaching the playoffs in itself? It feels like we've been talking about the playoffs all season, really. And actually, ever since this podcast started, really, back early September, I can't remember really an episode where we didn't mention the top 6 at some point. And for so long, we've been outside the playoffs, and then to time the run, and I know a lot of it is Leeds' demise as much as our brilliant run, but at the end of the day, we're in 6th, they're in 7th. How it was done over the season is irrelevant. It's an amazing achievement.
To go from where we were last year, scrabbling around in the bottom half of the division, basically being kept up by a 19-year-old and Ross McCormack.
A journeyman.
And a journeyman, maybe.
Talk about Ryan Tunnicliffe.
And just
Don't
about
mention those words.
just about being kept up by them, having a goal difference of like minus 21 to now being the top scorers in the league, one of the most potent forces going forward, albeit on one of the smallest squads in the league, has been an absolutely remarkable transition. And we're forgetting that a lot of the defenders we have this time round were people that we were actually using last year as well. You know, the likes of Ream, Mardle, Fredericks were all being used last year. Bettinelli was as well, sorry. And our football identity, the way that's just changed completely over from one season to another, from being horribly unorganised, very long ball, trying to be as direct as possible, missing out the midfield, to working through transitions, to working through thirds and creating lovely passing sequences and some truly fantastic goals. The way we've sort of morphed over this season has been nothing short of remarkable, and it all should all go down to one man, and we all know who that guy is. And
Kevin McDonald.
He's from fucking
Ryan Tunnicliffe.
He's from Serbia.
That was well opened up for a joke there.
He's from Serbia, and he will fucking murder you.
Yeah, we were talking about it before the podcast about how confident we have been this season, in the sense that last season we were thinking, you know, there were times where things were pretty good, but we weren't thinking about going into games, right, we could definitely win this game, we can definitely win this game. That really didn't happen. We weren't entirely sure which Fulham are going to turn up. Whereas this season, since late September, we'd be like, we know we're going to play well today. You know, we're confident. There's no matter which team we're going to face, apart from the odd blip here and there where we haven't really been up to scratch. But it's weird to think that every game this season, I thought to myself, we can win today. That hasn't happened since we're probably
Promoted the last time.
Exactly.
I think the actual way we're playing is arguably more, and that kind of attitude is more of an achievement in itself than reaching the playoffs. But, you know, now we're here, we have to kick on almost, as in we have, over the course of the season, minus, you know, the blip of September, we put that aside, we have been the third best team in this division at least. And I think that there are very few people that will disagree with that point. And even the games we've lost, I was saying to Farrell earlier, I can't remember, aside from Bristol City at home, being the inferior side in a home game this season. And that is a nuts statistic, especially if we've considered, you know, the two teams that are promoted. We were better than both those, you know, home and away, arguably.
Yep. And
we've outplayed, you know, pretty much everyone and anyone that's come and given us a straight fight. Yeah, we've had blips, we've had slip ups, and, you know, we weren't. Wolves is maybe the only other.
That's the one I was saying.
The one I was thinking of, which we'll probably touch on to later, is Sheffield Wednesday. We were only good when it got to about 80 minutes in.
See, I disagree with that. I don't think we were the worst side in that game. I just don't think we were necessarily as much better than them as we normally are. I think it was just a pretty even game. And for us to then be discussing an even game as a game that we're now being like, oh, were we maybe not the better side?
Whereas last year it was
mad.
like, we might be the inferior team, but we lost 6-0.
Yeah, it's mad that we have got into this kind of position where we're playing these teams, and you know, anyone that comes to town, you're like, come on then.
You wouldn't think that we were 20th last year. We were, you know, going back to when we were talking about the season we got promoted from Division 1, the year before we finished 8th or 9th, and then we, you know, won the league at a canter. But last season we almost got relegated. It wasn't beyond the realms of impossibility that we were going to get relegated. Whereas, you know, this time we're a totally different team.
Well, if you told me that, let's say, Birmingham City this time next year are going to be top scorers in the league and favourites to get promoted from the playoffs, I would think you're nuts.
I'd say Twiffick, we've got the old team back together. We've got Crouchy, Crankyard, Defoe,
Oddham Wingate.
all the lads. We're putting a band back together and we're going to get Birmingham promoted.
Yeah. Right, then we'll record that one.
So it's all been confirmed then that we're going to finish in 6th place. Sheffield Wednesday, Huddersfield and Reading have all 100% secured their places in the playoffs too. So the playoff dates were announced today. So Fulham will play on Saturday the 13th of May at 5:30 in the evening. That game will be at Craven Cottage against the side that finishes 3rd. And then our away leg will be on the 16th of May, the Tuesday evening at 7:45 away at one of those grounds. So we'll either, most likely, will be at the Medeski because Reading are in 3rd place now. And if they beat Burton, I think it's away from home, isn't it?
Yes, I believe so.
Then we'll face Reading. Could be Sheffield Wednesday, though. Could be Huddersfield. So it could be trips to Yorkshire as well. It's going to be, obviously, it's a straight shootout in the playoffs. There's no away goals, which I always think is quite... There's not many two-legged competitions like that don't have away goals.
That won't suit us.
No, wouldn't it? Actually, would be quite good for us, wouldn't it, if there was away goals?
Missed penalties count double.
Yeah, exactly.
Aside from who is the better away day, which I know we've touched upon lots in this
not
podcast.
Reading, is
No, I know. Which is
Best away day in the league.
I don't want to get dragged down by us slagging off the Medeski, as awful as it is. What side would Fulham match up against out of those three? What side would we most probably like, and what side would we least like? I feel like
I would say that we would least like Sheffield.
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion. I would say, considering we played Huddersfield so recently, even though we absolutely walked over them, they're not a bad side from what I've seen this season. Whereas Reading, I think, are complete frauds. I don't think they deserve to be up there.
And I'm going to completely counter that. Like, Reading are in 3rd position with a goal difference of like +1 or 2. They've got there by grinding out results and being really organised and getting those scrappy wins that, get you places.
All right, but you're a statistical man, and statistically, Reading should be like 12th.
Yeah, they should be, but they're not, are they?
I know, but that's not as in they've. You can't get to that kind of position with a goal difference of that low and that inferior figure if you haven't got lucky.
You can't say that to me when they're sitting there in 3rd.
I can.
Well,
Well,
I'm going to counter all of it and say, well, the statistics say that they've got 82 points and they are 3rd. So.
Exactly. Like, they're getting those 1-0 wins that get you places. They're like the Chelsea that won the league when they were just winning 1-0, 1-0, 1-0, 1-0, 1-0 constantly from Christmas onwards.
Do you know how many penalties Reading have missed this season?
I don't care.
Well, how many
rebounds they've scored. Reading are lucky and they are riding the crest of a wave. And I'm not saying I want to play them. I'm just saying that wave could continue. But if Reading get into the Premier League next year, they will beat Derby's record of being the worst side ever in the Premier League.
All I'm saying is that they've got to this position because they're clearly, clearly good enough at keeping the ball out of the back of the net when they need to, and they can get scrappy wins. And
but
that's why I'm so
question,
scared about it. But if it's an open game against a side like Huddersfield, we can win it. I don't want Reading, but I would quite enjoy Huddersfield. Sheffield Wednesday still scare me.
I don't want Sheffield Wednesday. They're the side I don't want. And I'd agree with you to a point. I'd rather have Huddersfield than Reading because I think that Huddersfield's style of play suits the way that we play. Whereas I think the Reading style of play will stifle us, especially at home. And I know what will happen. We'll miss a 90th minute penalty. We'll get knocked out, and Reading will go through with 12% possession, one shot on target.
Paul McShane getting the winner.
And we'll have had 2 disallowed goals from the ball's gone over the line because Reading are jammy this year and they will do it. That's why I wouldn't want to play them because I don't fancy playing against a team whose luck is that far on their side.
Yeah, and I'm agreeing with you on that part, but I also feel like the other part of the game, which is obviously the fundamentals, they're good at keeping the ball out of the net, whereas Huddersfield, the wheels just fall off occasionally. They just let in.
But then the wheels really fall off Reading occasionally, which is actually more the reason why their goal difference is so low.
They have conceded 62 goals, which is more than
Huddersfield.
more than
So they're not
anyone
that
in the
good at keeping the
top
ball out the back
seven.
of the net.
Just stop exposing me, Farrell.
But the one thing I will go by is that the game, the repeated away game at the Medeski was, I didn't think that Fulham played particularly well, but I don't think they played particularly terribly. But I thought Reading were good value for the win. I did think that they did keep the ball well, much better than any other team had done so in the 5-6 games previously against us.
I think that was one of our most lackluster performances of the season, if I'm honest. And I'll counter that because I just think that we never looked in that game. The only game where I thought we were as lackluster as that Reading away game was Villa away, where we didn't look like we were ever going to create a chance. We were terrible that day, and we were terrible at Reading as well. We just looked. It was the second time we played that 3 at the back with the 5 across the middle, and it just didn't work at all. We looked exposed down both flanks. Our fullbacks didn't push on enough. We didn't have enough in the midfield to counter the fact that they were coming through and to block John Swift, who basically ran the game. And it all sort of fell apart. And I'd argue that was one of our poorest performances.
Talk about
of
the away game.
Yeah,
that was a weird time for us. That was like the low point where, it was the baby stages of the Fulhamish podcast, and I was completely ranting about Slavitsa's emerging identity and how it wasn't really functioning. And I've loved the fact I've eaten my words whole since then.
Someone tried to mug me on the way home as well, so that was about as poor as it got, if I'm honest.
And since then, it's kind of been that point where we really picked up from then. And it showed that the identity and the tactical system of this Fulham team has worked.
And we don't play 3-5-2 anymore.
Thank God for that.
Well, obviously, we'll find out who Fulham do face on Sunday. And for me, I think it's quite a big motivation for Fulham to beat Sheffield Wednesday. We'll look at what we do in Sunday's game. Looked to be such a huge one only a few weeks ago. It's turned out to be a bit of a dead rubber. It might just be a bit of a party. But first of all, just a little bit of admin. Would really appreciate if you could get on iTunes today and maybe just give Fulhamish a rating on there if you haven't already. We can always just do with some, only if you want to give us a good rating, obviously, but if you log on to iTunes and give us a rating and a little review of what you think of the podcast, always helps us to spread the word, as iTunes loves a good old rating. So please do that for us. And now that we are definitely in the playoffs, apart from the 14-goal swing, Gotta say it for the disclaimer. We're going to be doing lots of extra podcasts. I'm sure you'll be glad to hear. So we will be doing a podcast after the Sheffield Wednesday game. Then there will be a special Thursday podcast with a first leg preview. The Monday after that, we'll be doing a first leg review and then a second leg preview. Then either the Wednesday or Thursday after that, we'll be doing a second leg review. If we reach the final, we'll do a preview the week after, or it will just be an entire season review if we do get knocked out in the semi-finals. And then I'm sure if we do get to the final, there will be lots of podcasts after that. So don't worry, we will have you covered with loads of coverage of the playoff chase.
We've got your back.
We have indeed. So what to do about Sheffield Wednesday? Bit of a dead rubber, as I just said, but it could dictate who Fulham face in the playoffs. And for me, I think that makes it quite an important game for Fulham, because I think Sheffield Wednesday are the side we want to avoid in the playoffs, and I think most Fulham fans would agree with me there. So paradoxically, it would mean beating Sheffield Wednesday to avoid Sheffield Wednesday in the playoffs is the best outcome.
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny one, if I'm honest. But, I think we've just got to go out there and I think you have to rotate. There's a lot of players who look knackered last 20 minutes on Saturday, and we really can't afford that over 2 legs in the playoffs, especially with the 2 games so close together. So I think you've got to look at resting players like Johansson, who looks like he could do with, maybe 20 out. And you could just, rest these players. And it also gives us a chance to slightly experiment with this middle 3. Because they've been so solid for the majority of the season, there hasn't really been any need to rotate or change them. But if something now went wrong, and we were discussing this earlier, we were saying who could replace Johansson. We haven't got a player that will sit in and replace Johansson if something desperately went wrong in, say, even the first or second leg if, we got through. And then we were in a final without our key link in our midfield. And that makes it quite a worrying prospect as such. So I suppose it's a chance to kind of give some players a run. Maybe Dennis Adiranan, good player. Like him in that kind of role where he did well again earlier in the season. He's done quite well there for the PL2 side. So it might be a chance to see him in action, to rotate the fullbacks. I think keep the middle three at the back pretty solid. Bettinelli, Reem, Callas seem to have quite a good understanding at the moment. I think it's a chance for them to carry on, build that. Rotate the fullbacks, see how we get on there, and maybe give big Chris Martin another chance up front and see how he gets on and see how much he wants it. And if he proves himself to, bangs in a hat-trick, then we've got another option. So I think that there's options to be had.
Not adverse to that in any way. In my personal opinion, the only thing I'd be concerned about is keeping the likes of Kenny and Johansson, in that groove, perhaps for want of a better term. But then on the flip side, on the other side of that coin, it's a case of we need to get someone like Adoy, who's obviously a huge competition for Fredericks. We need to get him going in case anything does happen to Fredericks, who can be prone to losing his head. Obviously, we don't want to pick up any injuries to any key players as well, which is why I wouldn't be like adverse to dropping Kearney just for this. And maybe it's given the likes of like Cabana, who's sort of fallen out of selection over these past few weeks, like giving him a full 90 or even a decent 80, 85 minutes, and looking at those wide areas to get those players back going again. And Chris Martin, it'd be really nice to give him a run out before we enter the two biggest games of our season.
You'd say the full-backs, especially like Fredericks, is almost a definite to not play on Sunday, because the amount of miles he puts into every game, someone like him having 2 weeks, and we saw it actually after the international break, how much of a difference that made when he had a full rest.
Yeah, we certainly picked him out even the weeks prior to that Fredericks is the kind of guy that we really need to rest even before that international break, and it absolutely showed in those games prior to that with Blackburn and Wolves, where the wheels started to fall off a little bit. But I think that Slavica will probably have to make that decision about players who are definitely in his plans, and he would like to keep match fit and keep in the groove, as Ben quite rightly says. So players like Adoy and Martin and Cabano are definitely, I would say, are shoo-ins to actually start on Sunday, because they, match fitness to them. They need to be fit and ready if there's an injury leading up to the game, or there's a knock early on in one of the playoffs games. Whereas someone like Parker or Andrianen might not probably get a run out, I do think. And I would say that absolutely, definitely the two centre-backs, you always want to keep your defence stable. I've always been an advocate of keeping consistency in the back 4 or 5. But I would say like Kenny and Johansson and McDonald, they've been playing so well that it'd be a big risk to kind of rest them. However, they are professionals, so you would expect them, if they're going to come out of the game and rest, that they won't come back firing on all cylinders.
I think the long and short of it is, like, we're getting to this point in the season, and we're getting to this point again where the real lack of depth in the squad is starting to show again, and we are looking leggy in the last 25 minutes of games, and that was the case against Brentford. It's been the case against Blackburn Rovers, and it's just a case of, like, everyone needs to regroup. We have a week off between the games, so it could lead to us playing a full 11, but we need to regroup and just refresh and then hit those 2 games with as much as we've got to try and secure that one off to get in the Prem. That's my view.
Notwithstanding that, actually, because we now play on the Tuesday in the midweek, that should we get to the final after the semi-finals, it's a 13-day gap between the second semi-final and the playoff final. So there is a big gap there as well for players to get fit again. So we're just looking at 2 games really in a very short space of time that the players have to be 100% ready for.
I would say that it's a good point to make, that but also it following on from that kind of when the players are starting to tire out a little bit. When we did pick up on that, it was a real point of fixture congestion. We were playing that replayed game against Reading. We were playing in the FA Cup at the same time, so we had fixtures moved for that as well. And it was a case of we were playing Saturday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday again. and for a good 2 or 3 weeks prior to, I think with a whole week before Sheffield and then when we'll be playing on the Saturday in the playoffs, that's a decent enough rest for any sort of Championship player.
And there'll be nearly 4,000 Fulham fans in attendance on Sunday. Slavisa in his press conference after the Brentford game said, we're not going up there for a joke. In Slavisa's amazing way that he says things. And Farrell, you're up for a party, aren't you? You're planning on going as a train guard.
Well,
So I heard.
It was an idea touted. I think it's going to be one of those ones where if either 4,000 people turn up or one person turns up, it shows whether it's going to be funny or just like there's a guy dressed as a train guard over there. How lame.
You need to explain why you're going as a train guard.
I didn't get it.
That is the
Well, that stems from the "we are not a train station" thing.
Right, there we go. Well, I'm certainly going to have my sombrero out. Jack, are you going to bring the flag?
Obviously, the flag made its first appearance at Brentford at the weekend. Went down a storm.
Unfortunately, wasn't taken by the stewards.
No, Sean Kavanagh came and kissed it. That was nice.
Is it an Ivory Coast flag?
Yeah, it's for Syriac as well when I turn it upside down. So that's a nice one. But yeah, it made an appearance. People seem to like it. You know, we had a good old time, and hopefully it'll have a secondary good old time at Sheffield.
Well, it's going to be a fun day out, I think, for the Fulham faithful. I know that some Fulham fans will probably be trying to sell their tickets now that there's nothing really riding on the game, but quite nice actually to be going to a game at this stage of the season, knowing that we've still got big games to come, but actually this is one that we can be quite relaxed for. The result doesn't really matter as much as you just don't want a hammering to lose momentum, and we can just have a bit of a party.
Yeah, Sammy told me earlier that he was looking forward to his 9 o'clock Strongbow Dark Fruits on the train to Doncaster.
I cannot wait.
Please
We're
drink.
all very excited.
Please drink responsibly.
And if
There are other drinks
if you're
available.
on our Doncaster train,
Come and say hello.
Yeah, do come say hello, because Jack and I are leading the Doncaster charge.
Look for the flag. It'll be up in the window.
Have you sent it off so it has was it Collins, someone else, and then we're going to have Sammy James on the.
Well, actually, the Gallagher isn't actually coming with us.
Oh.
He has a ticket and all sorts, but he then he's been summoned for his brother-in-law's stag do on a week's notice.
Oh,
And
no.
So he's actually not able to come. But
Is this a shotgun wedding?
Well, there are questions, but yeah, we have a replacement in lieu. But yeah, we might have to put. He's also called James, so we might have to put Collins James on the flag for a day.
All right, well, nearly time for the end of this week's podcast. Just a quick opportunity to check the old post bag. Jack, what's coming in this week? Is it bulging?
It is quite busy, but most of the questions appear to be exactly the same and questions that we've already kind of covered. So James Leesey and Spencer Bounds both asked about who we'd like to get in the playoff final.
Should we conclusively answer this? We didn't quite cover it. So, Farrell, who do you want right now? Go.
Leeds.
Right. Ben?
In the final?
Semi-final.
And final.
I don't know. Huddersfield would be my dream.
And Jack?
I'm going to go Reading, Huddersfield. I want someone else to knock out Sheffield
Reading,
Wednesday.
Huddersfield
Yeah.
would be great.
I do agree with
that's
that.
my exact
Yeah.
formula. I want Reading and then I want Huddersfield, and I just want nothing to do with Sheffield Wednesday, and it will be my main motivation for Fulham winning.
We had a great question from Alex at Pure Power, who said, is promotion really worth it if Ryan Tunnicliffe never plays for us again?
Yes.
Yep.
I
Makes
said
it all the
absolutely
sweeter.
not. But of course, that is a personal opinion, and no disrespect to all of you.
If
One's not good
Tunnicliffe,
enough.
if we get promoted and Tunnicliffe plays, makes one appearance, I will take your flag to an away game next year.
And get a Tunnicliffe shirt.
No, don't push your chances. Yeah.
However, one question that I asked yesterday on the Twitter, and loads of you got involved, I did a little bit of a poll. I said, what is the main motivation for you personally for Fulham winning the playoffs? And the two options I gave were this. I said, is it winning at Wembley, or is it playing in the Premier League? And before I give you the results of the poll, be interesting to see what you think. So is it just purely you'd like to be back in the Premier League, or is it going to Wembley and winning something there and the day out that comes with it and just the glory?
It's a tough question. Yeah.
Winning at Wembley, 3-0, and seeing Sonny Aluko's shirt off, running towards us, going mental, is just what I've got in my head right now. That's going to happen.
I don't think the poll has a character limit that long for that answer.
Mine's being invited on the Fulham bus as Steph Joe's personal correspondent.
What is that answer?
Yeah, as in, the tour bus, when you get promoted, you get, like, the Fulham go, like, a street parade and stuff.
You're
Yeah, I
going to be
get that.
nowhere near that bus.
Yeah, I am. I'm going to be on the bus.
Do you think Fulham are going to email you afterwards?
Oi, Steph Joe's mum liked my tweet the other day. I wrote an article
Oh, you're
about
pretty much
Steph.
married to him now, though,
Yeah,
are you?
exactly. I asked his mum for his hand in marriage and she said yes.
Farrell, give us a sensible answer, please.
Oh, I'm not entirely sure I can after hearing that.
It's from Jack. What do you expect?
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure. I was trying to think about what I would prefer because I never
Of course
thought...
you'd want to see us win at Wembley, right?
Yeah, I know.
But what's the bigger motivation?
I know, it is true because I want to see Fulham in the Premier League, and I never thought in my life that I would see Fulham even at Wembley, let alone winning. I don't know. Let's just go winning at Wembley.
Okay. Because for me, I didn't even think about it. I saw someone else ask this question online, and it's all about winning at Wembley for me. I think Jack threw up the stats on Twitter earlier last week about that. It's just us, not Huddersfield,
Accrington
Hartlepool,
Stanley, I think,
Barnet.
and Hartlepool and Barnet. Yeah.
that haven't played a competitive game at Wembley.
At New Wembley.
Since 1975 it was. None of us have played a competitive game at Wembley.
Well, we have.
Fulham have.
We were in the cup final.
No, but then since then, I think that's when the stat came about.
Oh.
There's only 5 sides in the English Football League that haven't played a competitive game at Wembley, and we are by far and away the highest side in the pyramid out of all those teams.
But have they won the Intertoto Cup?
No, they haven't, obviously, and that is a great achievement.
That is the bigger one. That wasn't a
Exactly.
third option.
And it makes up for everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look, European glory is one thing.
This went weird. I think it's time to end the podcast. Secretary Jack, back to your secretarial duties, please. What is the title of today's podcast, please?
That should be enough.
Hey, very nice. B spelt B-double-E, presumably.
Obviously.
Well, it's been a bit of a triumphant feeling podcast this week. Sorry if you can tell that we maybe went for 2 pints down the spoons beforehand. I hope it didn't come across too evidently. We will be back then on Monday next week, giving the reaction to the Sheffield Wednesday game. We'll have a special extra podcast next week with the preview to our playoff first leg, presuming that Leeds don't somehow do that 14-goal swing on Fulham. Thank you for downloading this week's episode. Thank you to Farrell Monk.
Thank you very much, Sammy.
Thank you to Ben Jarman
Thanks for having me on, Sammy.
and Jack Collins, as always.
Always a pleasure, Sammy.
Don't forget to give us some ratings on iTunes, and we hope to see you this time next week. So cheerio.
Toodles.
Later.
See ya.